Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, today is the second talk in the series. May you all get seated and give the consent with 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavatu arahato samma sambuddhasse. Katama chananda ganiccha sanya idhananda bhikkhu aranya gatoa rukkha moola gatoa sunyagara gatoa iti patti sanchikkati rupang aniccang vedana anicca Sanya anicca sankhara anicca viññānaṁ aniccanti Idhananda bhikkhu anicca sanyāti. Dear Venerable Sisters and Brothers, Dhamma friends, the first day, on the 10th, we had the first talk in this series. And there I try to introduce this particular discourse known as Girimananda Sutta. Anyone who is interested in finding the reference and further studies can go to the Anguttara Nikaya, the numeral presentation. It is in the book of 10 and known as Girimananda Sutta. Sometimes it is already also recognizes Dasa Sanya Sutta, the discourse related with 10 perceptions. Girimananda is named after the particular bhikkhu, particular monk, as the main person in the situation. So, during the time of the Buddha, at the contemporary time, that venerable, namely Girimananda, was sick, and that very news Venerable Ananda, the chief attendant, reports the Buddha and requests Bhante, out of compassion, would you mind to pay a visit to Venerable Girimananda? But in this situation, the Buddha, considering everything, he says, Ananda, it is good if you can go and preach him the 10 perceptions or dasa sanya, and after giving that brief introduction, the Buddha enumerate the 10 perceptions starting from anicca sanya, the perception of impermanence, and first he gives the content, and then one by one he gives the little elaboration. First one is called uddesa in Pali, and then the little elaboration is called niddesa. And in some discourses, not in this particular case, the Buddha himself gave patiniddesa. It is like sub-commentary. So first give the topic, and then a little briefing, and then commentaries. This is the way he presents whatever the profound things. So we took the very first one, that is the anicca sanya, that is to say the notion of impermanence or perception of impermanence, and this is very crucial according to the teaching of the Buddha. He, according to the teaching, anyone who fails to understand this anicca sanya is not a spiritual man. There is no progress. This is the stepping stone. So one has to be familiar with this anicca sanya, this understanding of very notion, the impermanence happening in 3 levels. First in the perception level, sanya level, and then chitta level. It is come into the more and more digested, familiarized, seasoned at the mental level. Then only then your permanent notion could be eradicated in a substantial way. So therefore you have to fight with permanent notion with the impermanent notion, and the permanent mind set up with the impermanence mindset, and then only at the ditthi level you can slowly eradicate or replace permanent notion with the impermanent notion. So, knowing that here the Buddha says, if someone wish to be healed or recovered from the physical mental diseases, first and foremost therapeutic effect is the understanding of this impermanent notion or impermanent perception. So therefore this teaching and understanding and absorbing of impermanent notion is a therapeutic one. But as I tried to discuss in the first discourse, not only in the therapeutic and healing side, it is addressing to the preventive part also. So many, specifically the Western thinkers and people think about the immediate, in this very life, effect of Buddhism, try to interpret or give more highlight to the therapeutic value of the teaching of the Buddha than the prevention. So therefore, for such interpreters, they will be happy to point out the Girimananda Sutta, Bojjhanga Sutta, and many things as healing effect. But each and every case you can carefully, if you study, it says that the healing effect or the therapeutic effect happens only for the people, those who have already mastered the teaching of the Buddha. And for them, this is just a reminding, this is just arousing their internal power. So therefore, this Girimananda Sutta or equally the Bojjhanga Sutta, just mere by therapeutic acceptance, it won't work much in an efficient way. So therefore, in this particular case, Venerable Girimananda was a well-acquainted person, quite mindful person, steadfast with the mindfulness. But for the moment, he's low in the ebb, in the mood. So therefore, the Buddha asked Venerable Ananda to go there and remind the same thing, and there the therapeutic effect or healing effect can come, and he can recover from the physical and mental situations. So it's very interesting to see, specifically in the Bojjhanga Sutta, Buddha himself is asking his disciples to come and recite the Bojjhanga Sutta for the healing of the Buddha's very own physical body. So that is a kind of a reminder, so that his all already developed qualities will be come intact and the healing effect can happen. But you can misinterpret telling Bojjhanga Sutta is good for people to listen and be healed. Girimananda Sutta also equally good, and likewise many people make it as mantras, make mystics, make so much of juggleries in order to limit it into a therapeutic effect or healing effect. So I try my best to not to lead any person to that kind of short objectives. So each and every time you have to understand, these all teachings are just a reminder for a very elderly disciples of the Buddha, and by reminding their therapeutic effect come up and their healing effect come up, and then they recover. So with that introduction, if you go a little bit into this anicca sanya or impermanent notion, in the elaboration the Buddha says, Idhananda bhikkhu aranyagato va rukkhamulagato va sunyagara va, is now onward he is giving kind of detailed instructions for a beginner, as if enumerating internal and external environment or macro and micro climate best suited for the establishment of the mindfulness. He says, better go into a forest or sit under a tree or go to a place or empty hut or a solitude place, and then he contemplate the materiality, the rupang, aniccang, the materiality is impermanent. So this is just a notion. There are some misinterpretations, or maybe leading to misinterpretation. Some teachers, I am not critical about the individual teachers, but I am telling they recommend people to go and sit and contemplate, my body or corporeality is impermanent, my feelings are impermanent, my perceptions are impermanent, my volitional activities are impermanent, my consciousness is impermanent. It is just like a mantra. They keep on practicing or contemplating upon that, thinking it is leading to Nibbana. But if you carefully analyze it, this is just a notion to give a mindset. It is not to repeat again and again as a mantra and then to gain kind of a momentum or potential power. So therefore, how can we use this impermanent notion in order to establish mindfulness, specifically as a beginner? So there, if we consider sitting meditation, we took time towards the latter part of the talk, towards at the beginning of the sitting meditation, for an example, if someone try to establish the mindfulness here and now, here now I am sitting, our natural tendency is to expect kind of a permanent notion, permanent perception, this is what the Buddha is meant, but I don't get it. Whatever I get it is always changing. It is a flux. It is morning one notion, evening one notion, at the beginning one, end the one, middle the one, and therefore anyone who met up with this changing notion, changing perception, consider as a mistake, consider as something wrong with the object. So therefore ever complaining rather than reporting what he or she knows. So therefore, if that particular person is being well instructed, don't worry about the facet. Don't worry about it is flux. You try to explain whatever may be, what you observe, and therefore your preconceived ideas, your expectation must be kept aside. Don't report me inference, just report me the observations. In order to make the mindset, someone must at the outset must instructed the very materiality that you are about to observe is impermanent. So it is not your mistake. It is something not to get frightened, but see, your mind always try to see exactly the same thing or repetition of the same thing. Under such circumstances, the changing nature appear like a threat. Changing nature appear like something not trustworthy. So that is why at the beginning you must have this impermanent notion. For example, when you are observing the sitting posture, what you experience, what you understand as a sitting posture, whatever the way you try to explain, sufficiently you can't explain. That's a given fact. Nothing to worry. Still, to develop the rapport with the teacher, with the advanced yogi, you try. Like a baby explaining with her baby language, with the mother, honestly, what is experiencing, and moment to moment changes are there. So let us go a little further. While you are sitting, while you are familiarizing your symmetric, relaxed sitting posture, you happen to see rising and falling mode, or in-breath and out-breath mode. So now you wish to share with your teacher, and you try to explain this is how rising and falling, this is how the in-breath and out-breath. Each time when you are trying to explain it, you find the early shape and the early manner is now changed. Now and then it is quite changing. So therefore, what to report, where to start, how to chronologically explain, always difficult because your mind is so concrete. It is expecting something permanent. It is expecting something, a shape, permanent manner. So therefore, mind is not ready to accept whatever the shape arising, whatever the manner arising. And still, as a still subtle point, whenever you observe the sitting posture, your experience is a flat one. Whenever you see rising and falling, or in-breath and out-breath, it is a wave. So therefore, whenever you go to the seashore, you can see the horizon, it's a flat. But with you, it's the deep end of the sea. But if you see the shallow end, so always waves. One after the other, waves are breaking. You can count the waves, and you can see big waves, small waves. But when you slowly go deep and deep, they become continuous waves, not breaking. You can't count. And when you go to the horizon, it's a flat. Exactly like that, when you sit, and if you are very advanced, if your mind is so aligned, you can see the sitting, I am sitting. Or you are to experience that I am not dead, I am not sleeping, I am not unconscious. The signal to indicate that I am living, the signal to indicate that I am awakened, that I am not unconscious, it's always a flat experience. So that we find very boring, very monotonous. You never consider this as a good meditation. Instead, you find it's very boring and you feel unsatisfied. So instead, the up and down waves, rising and falling, or in-breath and out-breath, Buddha himself accepted. There you can see big, long in-breath, short in-breath, coolness, hardness, all the kind of thing. So more and more you become familiar, more and more we become immediate with, more and more with continuous with the in-breath and out-breath. I would like to take in-breath and out-breath as the example. You find the in-breath to out-breath, there's a drastic changes as far as the experience is concerned. More you practice, you will see in-breath to in-breath also there are some changes. Out-breath to out-breath also there are some changes. So at the beginning in this, the last part in this Girimananda, the sutta, the Buddha says, you sit and you see this is in-breath, this is out-breath. And you can see this is long in-breath and long out-breath. And it is now changing to the short in-breath and short out-breath. That means not only the contrast between the in-breath and out-breath, but in-breath to in-breath also chronologically changing. These things you will be prepared if you accept the impermanent notion. Otherwise, whenever the breath becomes subtle, you will be disheartened, telling that I am getting a distance from the object, or my mindfulness is become discharged or weakened. So that is because you are internally accustomed this permanent notion. And whenever it has become very subtle, due to the more and more familiarization, you become completely disoriented and upset if you are with permanent notion, permanent perception. That is why the Buddha says, first and foremost, you must have impermanent notion, impermanent perception. You are just a reporter of what you see. But don't let your permanent notion going to come and mingle with your interpretations. You are reporting. If it is so, what you are reporting is not what you observed, what you expected to observe it. So, in order to overcome that situation, it takes so much of interviews, so much of close relationship, dialogues and rapport, then only one will be reporting as and when it happens, leaving rooms for this permanent notion. So, when I went to the Panditarama and when I am practicing, whenever I am reporting Sayadaw was never happy. And again he says, don't add any inferences. Just let me know what you observe. This is because we are always try to have something kind of a permanent notion. With that outlook only we look into the in-breath and out-breath. So even the in-breath and out-breath is undergoing some evolution or metamorphosis. We fail to observe because our mindset is not ready with this impermanent notion. So more and more you observe it, you will understand this was there even before, but you have never reported because your mind was not with the impermanent notion. And when and where you understand it, whether you start with in-breath and out-breath or rising and falling, whatever may be, object is least important. Only thing is chronologically your ability to understand, and not only understanding, reporting, communication with another person. So, Upandita Sayadaw, he used to say, it's a good example. He used to say in the dusk or in the dawn, when you are walking in a forest area, there may be an ant line across the path. So during the bad light and your poor eyesight, you can see this as a rod, or a thread, or a root. It appears permanent. So if you are not inquisitive, you can see on the road across, you find a rope, or find a root, or any kind of thing. But if you are inquiring and go closer and closer, you may find it is not a dead thing, it is changing. Ants are scrolling. And now you see it is not something dead and permanent, it's something changing, activity is there. And you more and more inquisiting mind, leading you to the close observation, there you may find it's no continuity. Ant after the ant, there is a passing movements, there is no rod, there is no thread, there is no root. Now only you can see, for a long distance, everything appears permanent. When you come closer and closer only, you find within that permanent notion there are a lot of activities, a lot of vigility, a lot of vital things are happening. Unless otherwise you forget about everything and focus on the particular thing, then you can see within this so-called permanent situation, individual particles are moving. And more close observation, you find there is no permanent solid thing. It is one ant after the ant is passing. So one same phenomena, three people will report in three different ways. The first person who take the term permanent notion is the person looked at the object with a long distance. The person who observed this is within that so-called rod, some activities, he is somewhat close to the object. More and more you go to the immediate with the object, there is no flow. Ant after the ant. So this is the exactly thing happen if you continue to observe one particular object unshaken with mindfulness. Object must be the same. For example, in-breath and out-breath. And you must be continuously observed chronologically without leaving any rooms. And more you observe, whether you like it or not, the object observed and the observing mind become closer and closer and closer. So when that happens only, your impermanent notion will be seconded, the suggestion will be seconded, your observation will be very vital, and you get involved into this very object. Ultimately your mind also become activated, vigilant, diligent, object also in the same way. Ultimately both of them are going to work in the exactly the same vibration. Then appear the physical phenomena and the observing mind merge each other. That is what we call ekaggata or one-pointedness. You are merging with the object. So before it happens, if you do not have this mindset, you always report it is a permanent thing. So much so, due to your misperception, everything you reported is misinterpreted, miscommunicated, not only from you to the other, within yourself this miscommunication is happening. So therefore, in order to get rid of this misperception, first you have to give a theoretical understanding, look at the same principle with the impermanent notion, and give a thorough observation, continuous observation, precise aiming, diligent energy, and then only one day you will prove your null hypothesis. This is the way the Buddha put the null hypothesis into your study, your project, and ask you to keep on continuing in order to get rid of this wrong notion, wrong perception, and then when and where this object observed as it is, you see whether it is dead or living, whether you are inside the object or outside the object, everything in a cosmic dance, everything in a dance. So that is what the scientist hit the point. Earlier they had the different elements. This is hydrogen, this is helium, this is oxygen, this is blah blah blah. They put everything into the fixed cages of the periodical chart, and we as students, we keep on by heart it, and then we thought we know this is hydrogen, this is helium, this is carbon, and we have the picture in our mind. This is the way hydrogen, and this is the way helium, and when it is come to the oxygen, the different cycles and kind of thing. And at that time, when we were taught, they knew the building block of the intelligent design of the God was the atom. Atom is unbreakable. Earlier it was the iron, and then it became the atom. And later they break off the atom also, they went into the subatomic particles, and there they found atom-wise they have their specific characteristics. When they go to the subatomic particles have the common character. For wherever it represents subatomic particles, never recognize he is working in hydrogen or helium or oxygen. They are exactly the same. And then they reduced the building block into the subatomic particles. It was a handful of electron, proton, positron, quarks, blah blah blah. But later only they break that also even into the, ultimately they found energy never recognize hydrogen, helium, oxygen. Wherever it may be, energy is energy. They are ever in a flux. They don't have any specific gravity. They don't have any place. They don't have any time. And then only Einstein, the Newtonian physics, came into the Einstein physics, and physics went further. Ultimately they found energy-wise they are common in character, but when that energy get in the quantum and represent as the helium represent, they have individual characters as far as they agglomerated, as far as they observed at a distance. But when you come closer and closer, everything is happening from the common energies. So exactly the same thing the Buddha did under a fig tree. And you observe the breath. More and more you go into the zoom out, we see ultimately the energy, the primordial energy, the basic energy is exactly the same. Due to our permanent notion, we find it as an in-breath or out-breath or rising or falling, and then we make stories. We become prolific and start to going to communicate with all the people, but when and where you manage to see the energy as such, you can't make stories. There is no mental proliferation. You can't claim it me and not me. That is the point where the conventional language, theories, philosophies, everything loses the boundary. Exactly the same thing. The Newton lost this thing and went to the Einstein. And from the Einstein also, he reduced the ultimatum is the light energy or the protons, and this is the ultimatum. This is traveling in such a fast speed, and out of this is the ultimate. Now, few months ago, that also broken off. They found another matter can travel faster than light. And then now, therefore, theoretically, Einstein also gone. And further we are going. Exactly the same, the Buddha also mentioned, if you are looking at the thing in an agglomerated manner, careless manner, distance manner, you are very happy to interpret it as a permanent, pleasurable, auspicious, continuous with the soul. But fix that matter then and there as possible. Of course, it is not rational statement. And keep on observing, close by close, more and more mindful, more and more with energy, more and more with the idea this is impermanent. Ultimately, without any hindrance, you can come closer, very vigilant, very diligent, very precise. You can see through. You can go deep, penetrate into the in-breath and out-breath. Ultimately, you just see the flux, exactly the flux that you see is here now I am sitting. No waves now. It's become flat. So, from the in-breath and out-breath wave to flat off and be merged with the horizon, some people at the beginning take 35-40 minutes. They start with the gross in-breath and out-breath and then come to the medium level in-breath and out-breath. Ultimately, they completely dissolve, no in-breath and out-breath. At that time, you can experience here, now I am sitting. This is the point you started with. And when you come up to that level, nothing you can see hold as an object, nothing consolidated, no quantum, everything go back to their original energies, then easily you can see no me and not me boundary. And what you experience, very difficult, hardly you can communicate with others, but it is something under your very nose, very solid experience. So this is how, regarding the materiality, from the permanent notion to the impermanent notion, the changes takes place. Once you accept this impermanent notion and season it, familiarize it, master it, soon you sit, within 2-3 minutes you can go to that kind of a vibration without any recognition of in-breath and out-breath, rising and falling. You can, right from the beginning, can feel, here now I am sitting, living, being, and that experience, not limited to sitting experience, not limited to the in-breath and out-breath, not limited to the rising and falling. Even in the walking meditation sometimes, when and where mind become very aligned, you may find, even though you are intentionally walking, left leg, right leg, you can see this energy, and that is the point you start to feel the walking happen effortlessly, everything like a robot. You can look at yourself as an outsider, things are happening, and you can see that you are merged with, effortlessly walking happen. And we stand still, exactly the same. And before you go to the sleep, you lie down on the bed and you focus too, and then you can see the energies. And this is how you can verify that very rupang anicchang within this life, or within, the Buddha says, maximum 7 years, and reduce it to 7 days. And when and where it is happening, not that each and every one of you experience it, every one of you rejecting it. You have the fear. You have the phobia. This is called neophobia, or fear of freedom. Whenever it happens, you force breathe. and try to go into the breathing and then start in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, and then start to play the different games. Because this, you are always, your permanent notion is objecting the reality. So therefore, day by day, you have to do again and again. Let the thing happen by its own accord and observed without any preconceived idea, without any expectation. And for that, 1001 time you have to apply it. And for that only, this very notion, this changing nature, the flux, the impermanent nature, is what the nature is. Permanent notion is a madness. That is what you call ignorance. That is you do because you see only the agglomeration. You look in the careless manner, unmindful way, long distance. And then easily you can understand, I am a Buddhist, you are non-Buddhist, I am a male, you are not female. All the sectarianism happen and each and everyone start fighting each other. So whenever you go to the impermanent and you see the flux, hardly you can see in and out, hardly you can see individual characteristics, but like knowingly or unknowingly, you are losing the boundaries of the ego, you are losing the boundaries of the conceit, you are losing the boundaries of desire, and when that happens, you feel like threatened, you feel like lost, you feel like outcasted, you feel like bored, you feel like fearful. That is why the Buddha says, start with the faith. Do it again and again. Be prepared for this impermanent nature, impermanent notion, perception, and go little by little, slowly, slowly your mind will be bold enough or radical enough or going against the grain. One day, once accepted it, it's a huge release, and that release is what called healing power. That is what you call the therapeutic effect. So sometimes when you are meditating, when the mind is preparing for this kind of an alignment, you feel muscle dance, you feel heat and cold, you feel heat bubbles, hot bubbles, and when it is happening, it is a kind of a training of your mindset to accept it. But you can see how much it is being objected, or how much we entertain doubts. Am I wrong? Or am I going samatha way? Or vipassana way? What is that? All kind of questioning happens. But when it happens, the Buddha says, if you are in the continuity of the mindfulness, please don't entertain doubts. The answer for that doubt is, if your mindfulness is intact, continuous, then trust upon the mindfulness and just go ahead. This is how we are preparing this anicca sanya into anicca citta. The permanent notion we are hardening into accepting in our mindset. This is the biggest evolution that we stopped 40 millions ago before. We stop it. Now Buddha is telling, if you let that impermanent notion to set in, then your mind evolve very fast within 7 days or within 7 years. Then you can see through, just like the scientists are going to see through their machine how the electrons and protons are working. So therefore the Buddha never used microscope and telescope and nothing. He looked inwardly. Scientists are so fools, they are looking outwardly. No end. Simply no end. Buddha says, my technique is inside, look inwardly, no end. Ultimately you will understand exactly what they see. They are looking into external thing. So they have to keep on observing different universe or multiverse or keep on going on. But when you go inside, one day you can understand there's an end to the trip. So therefore understanding the impermanent notion or impermanent perception into the impermanent citta, it's a kind of a evolution. And your likings and disliking, your personality traits, your hobbies, everything you have to sacrifice. Because all likings and disliking, your traits and your hobbies are completely solidification of permanent notion. And that is why we are fighting day by day, fighting with the nature, fighting with the colleagues, fighting with the neighbors. Every time we find everyone must be fit according to my likings and disliking, my personality. So you are the root of friction. Whenever you are ready to accept impermanent, that means you are ready to accept Taoism. Things are happening according to the universal law. It is my duty to fit into that rather than adjusting the world according to my liking and disliking. It is such a small crux, small thing, but it takes so long time. How one can be attracted to in that is, the Buddha says, if you are ready to accept this impermanent notion, your body will be healed, mind will be healed, that you can experience in this very life. And once that mindset is being prepared, your outlook and your notion prepared, not stopping at that level. Then the Buddha says, now with the help of this mindfulness on the in-breath and out-breath, or materiality, or your corporeality, or your rupa, slowly mind goes into the arupa, the immaterial thing. The first and foremost thing is your feelings. Rupang aniccang, vedana anicca. When you are observing how earlier you try to see physical qualities of my being here and now, the physical qualities of the in-breath and out-breath, when and where mind becomes refined, become mindful and aligned, you can understand, you can express, you can communicate through feelings. How do I feel when I sit symmetrically? How do I feel when I sit relaxed? And this is my feeling. And how do I feel the in-breath versus out-breath? How do I discriminate the feeling regarding the rising mode and the falling mode? So it's another completely different language. It is happening through the immateriality. And the very obvious, simple thing is, unless otherwise you become familiar, unless otherwise you master the materiality, you can't go into immaterial side. And the same thing can be expressed in other way. Once the materiality is being mastered, it is naturally cascading down to the immaterial thing. When the rupang aniccang, one become experience, vedana anicca, you are naturally forced or pushed toward that exercise, challenge, and then you can express exactly the materiality, the way you feel it. And as I try to analyze in the first day, out of these feelings, whole humanity chasing behind the pleasure principle. Their whole knowledge, day in, day out, they reject the pain and chasing behind the pleasure. So Sigmund Freud verily put it in the pleasure principle. So therefore our knowledge on the feeling is exactly paralyzed. Exactly paralyzed. Because we have trained it only for the pleasure principle. So therefore the Buddha says, at least you have to understand relativity. The pleasure cannot live without pain. So accept the feeling as such without discriminating pain and pleasure, desirable and undesirable. Just let it happen, and therefore your basic exposure, main exposure is to the pain, because that was the thing you suppressed so far. But in the meditative life, in the vipassana way, you consider it is another shadow of the pleasure. So far you had the phobia, you had the rejecting nature, and let that also in, and ultimately you find, though you, out of permanent notion, chase behind the pleasure and pleasure principle, pain and pleasure go in hand in hand. That is the way. That is the way it is going there. So the day you open yourself to understand feelings rather than pleasurable feeling, then your openness, the paralytic nature disappears. You see the pain and the pleasure. So therefore, any religious, spiritual path is giving a fair chance for the pain to arise, accept the pain as a part and parcel of the feelings, and when it is explaining, the Buddha, at the third dimension or another dimension, in between pain and pleasure, there is a sphere, no pain, no pleasure. And after painting the picture, he says, the emancipation, the Nibbana is not in the pain side, not in the pleasure side. If at all it is available in the middle area, no pain, no pleasure, this is the what you reject as boredom. That is what you reject as monotony. That is what you reject as uncertain. That's why you reject as fearful. And that's why you reject as the sloth and torpor or slimy mind or the inactive mind. And you keep on practicing different hobbies, different escapism. When and where mind comes to the no pain, no pleasure, you feel it's boring, it's very, very monotonous. What about look at the television? What about looking at the news reel today and giving a telephone call and talk with the dear and near ones? And more you have televisions, the bigger one, the world, and you recognize you are a rich person. You have a lot of papers coming to the house. You are a rich person, affluence. So Godwin used to say people are more suffering than affluenza than influenza. This is called affluenza. Keep so much of distraction from you so that you never allow the mind to come and rest in no pain, no pleasure. Exactly like never allow the mind to be here and now. It's distracted to the past and future. Here and there, that person, this person. When and where I come to the here and now, you feel uneasy. You feel nauseatic. You feel bored. You feel monotonous. But the path is there. So that same thing you can explain in terms of feelings. Your parents, your teachers, your professors, your doctors, your lawyers, your politicians, your socialists, and everyone pushing you vehemently toward the pleasure principle. And you see they are the real people have feelings. They are the only one calculating good formulas for me to maximize the pleasure. That bloody fools, themselves also much in the pain. But when they come to you, they come with long smile and everything. I know the formula. Please give me something in terms of tax or kind of thing. I will teach you the pleasure principle. But the Buddha explained things as they are. Therefore, in order to teach you about the total story of the pain and pleasure, just have the openness to the pain, and then only you will can understand relativity. And what about the changing position, the transient nature from the pain to pleasure and pleasure to pain? Our senses, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind are never geared, never evolved to experience no pain, no pleasure. So therefore, when and where you come to the no pain, no pleasure, you experience something beyond your senses capacity. This is superhuman. This is spiritual. This is another dimension. So the Buddha says, as far as the feelings are concerned, understand the madness you did so far in pursuit of pleasure, and just be open to the pain and pleasure. And not only that, be aware when the pendulum is going to the two sides, you have to see it is passing the middle so quickly. So appear like permanent places are in the two ends when the pendulum is turning. But whenever the pendulum is resting, it is resting in the middle, which was the fastest moving place when it is functioning. So therefore no one can observe the pendulum and see if at all it is to rest, it will rest in the fastest place. So therefore you have to, if you wish to see the game regarding feelings, you have to do intentional physical work. We call it as a restraint. Intentional verbal work, we consider as the moral restrainment, physical and verbal. And then you sit. Even if it is something happening, maybe, but your humble request, humble restrainment is to not to intentionally move the body, intentionally talk and observe it. And then you can see, even though you manage to be 100% morally restrained, and 100% you can stop physical movements and the verbal, you see the game is happening 100%. Even if you stop intentional, physical and verbal, your mind is working. It's a devil's, the blacksmith shop is working at a fast rate. So recently in the IMS, they have done the experiment, fixing the person into the functional MRI scan and let the person to sleep. The control experiment was the other person is reading something or listening something still inside the functional MRI scan, and compare it, the working person, awake person and the sleeping person, brain activity is no difference. Exactly it is happening. So what is happening in the sleeping person's brain is never according to his agenda. 100% someone else's agenda. But the other person thinks things are happening according to my agenda. But no difference. And then they are given a shock and awaken the sleeping person, then the spike happen, again it flat off. So therefore whether you do so much of creations, so much of productivity, you claim this is my discovery, this is my experimenting, and you go for registering patent and claim your royalty, but ultimately you are working with someone's agenda, things are happening. So feeling wise, if you open into that, without doing any physical activity or verbal activity, look at it, then you can see how the pain and pleasure changing one to the other. When and where it is gone to the pain and pleasure, your mind is so engaged, it is so absorbed, so you are so, but the Buddha says, unmindful. So therefore either you hate or either you develop the desire. So therefore you are look into the pain either through desire or either through hate. So therefore your observation to the pain and pleasure is always sick, always conditioned. So you never can give a good interpretation about the pleasurable feeling and the painful feeling without the likings and disliking. So every one of us is miscommunicating. Only the place, if at all, you can interpret is when there is no pain, no pleasure. And because no pain, no pleasure is not colored by desire, likings and disliking, but you are completely dumb-bound when no pain, no pleasure happens. Only through spirituality you can go into that. Only through this religious activity you can go into that. So you must understand pain and pleasure is changing so fast. Each time it is going to the pain to the pleasure to the pain, you have to understand it is passing a black hole, a trap. Your mind never perceive it. Unless otherwise you go prepared and try to make a note, this is the point, I lose the touch. This is the point, the black hole. So not you must specialize on the pain, not you must specialize on the pleasure, you must specialize on the changing from the pain to the pleasure and the pleasure to the pain. So how much you observe it, it is exactly like a magician It never show you the trick. And you pay money and observe and clap and say, he is a magician, he can do this marvel and that marvel. But everything is, you are cheating yourself, magician is cheating you. So therefore the Buddha says, if you wish to understand the no pain, no pleasure situation, take the pain as one extreme, pleasure as one extreme. Try to do away with them so that let the pendulum to be more and more calm. And when more and more calmness happens, the proximate symptom is you feel bored, you feel monotonous, you feel uncertain, you feel fearful. So if you can make this as a sign, make this as a signal, now meditation is leading to the understanding of the full picture of the pain, the feelings, how much preparedness you should have, how much you must listen to the Dhamma, how much you have to contemplate and see. So far, I never see it, my senses are not geared to look at it, but the Buddha, very patiently, systematically, it says on top of that, you must have preparedness. This preparedness is the technically recognized as perception. You not only be happy with the pain and the pleasure, but try to be prepared, the changing over nature. So therefore, more and more you practice, you are getting more and more opportunities to see in between place. It is like in a relay race, not the individual player's lap, but how the baton is being changed without dropping. That is the secret of the relay race. So likewise, there is no single lap. It's a multiple laps. Each and every time, in the change of the baton, from the pain to the pleasure, pleasure to the pain, if you are to observe, you must have the, sorry to say, equal attitude to the pain and the pressure. Then you are no more a human. Because you are so far pushing to the pleasure principle, now you have to accept both in the equipoise mind. For that, this notion is very important. For that, this preparedness is very important. We call a hermit. We call diligent effort and precise aiming is the no pain, no pleasure. For that, the preparation of the mind equally to the pain and pleasure, it is not in the rational world. That is why we call it spiritual. We call it religious. So therefore, any person working towards that, enduring towards that, even he or she approached it or realized it or not, both of them are praiseworthy. Even by just mere doing this experiment. That is why the Buddha says that this is the best you can do to understand yourself. This is the best you can do for your well-being of yourself, and that is the best you do for your healing power, your therapeutic power. Not through the anesthesia, it's a killer. Not through the escapism, just facing it when it is changing from one to the other. So, if someone is very keen to see the end of the out-breath and beginning of the in-breath, again another point you can hit the target. Changing from the in-breath to out-breath, out-breath to in-breath. And all the masters will understand end of the out-breath and beginning of the in-breath is more vulnerable place you can hit the target. So therefore practice unto the point to see in-breath and out-breath, and the secret is not in the in-breath, not in the out-breath, but end of the out-breath and beginning of the in-breath. And that also can be explained as changing from the pleasure to pain, pain to pleasure. Don't worry about the attractive nature of the pain and the pleasure. You must not distract by that, but focus upon the in-between part. So this is the best hobby, the biggest challenge, and I would say the biggest addiction in the world. If you focus into that, it is more than drugs. You will never be taken off. It is so hilarious, it is so thrilling, it is so electric whenever you focus from the beginning of the out-breath and the end of the out-breath and the beginning of the in-breath. From pleasure to pressure, pain, pain to pleasure. If you see the in-between, you see it is utmost religious practice. So I hope this is leading and constructive and you to practice it. With that remark, I would like to sum up the today's talk. Thank you very much for listening.